Hey everybody, Tom Kaczynski here. I'm going to be pretty quiet because it's 2:45 or so in the morning, I believe, and Dana's asleep and I came downstairs. I wasn't really watching. I had fallen asleep, but she had a feed on and I was listening as Trump came on. And so I wanted to talk about that real fast, what I thought was happening. You have to forgive me if I look like I was half asleep because I was, and I'm just holding my phone downstairs here so you can actually hear a little bit of what I'm thinking. And what I want to tell you is nothing is right with this scenario, but it's called a dusty finish. And let me explain what a dusty finish is for those who don't have a love of wrestling, right? In wrestling, what happens is when you want to build the tension to an event, you have someone win, but you have them win in a way where they don't clearly win. And it's called dusty because it's not a clear win. Like, for instance, one person will win the wrestling match, but they'll win on a disqualification or something like that. And that's what we're seeing here in the United States. Now, I warned you that at the beginning of my preview today that what we were looking at was we were going to have a situation where they wanted to enable the Great Reset, where they wanted to cause the biggest amount of chaos, and they wanted to cause discord to have civil unrest happen. Because remember, the end game of this is not for Trump to win or Biden to win. The end game of what we are seeing here is bigger than the political theater that is our election, and it's the destabilization of the United States of America. So what did we see? We saw an election that was set up too perfectly to go ahead and look like exactly a theft from each sides. If you're a Trump supporter, you're looking at the states of Michigan, of Pennsylvania, of Georgia, of all these states that are just refusing to shut down and they don't count their votes. When have we ever seen this before, where states just say, no, we're not going to count our votes now, and we're going to add them up, especially in two states like Pennsylvania and Michigan, which Trump needs to get over the top, and which by all statistical evidence he very easily should achieve in a fair election. The odds of him winning are like 80-90%. Not absolutely certain, but a mathematical certainty. On the other hand, if you are a Biden supporter or a Democrat, you look at this thing, you're going to see Trump saying, hey, we're not going to count all the votes. And you've been told and propagandized for months that, well, we're going to have as long as we need to have the votes, and that you literally have the evil Cheeto in the White House. And at the same time, we've seen stories about bricks being put in different cities, plans for violence all throughout this week. And you begin to see that this meltdown has been constructed in such a way. Now, here's what I suspect is true. I don't think the election results are necessarily reflective of anything other than the script they want to put out there. I suspect, given the numbers and what I saw out there, that Trump probably did win an overwhelming victory. And I suspect what we will see in the days ahead is this lawsuit that is launched by Trump will be upheld by the Supreme Court on a 5-4 decision, with Amy Coney Barrett being the swing justice required, and that you will see mass riots happen where there will be an emergency injunction to go ahead and rule and win this race for Trump. And he has a legitimate argument in my mind, because what we are seeing happen out here is we have no way of knowing the chain of custody of all this information that's out there. And we have states, when we're looking specifically at the states of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, where we have Democratic governors in states that voted Republican or appeared to this cycle, that were going out there and that they were going to say that this was going to be an issue where this was going to be really ugly. And given, and look, I lived in Pennsylvania for almost 15 years of my life. I've lived in Philadelphia and in Pittsburgh. In fact, I came up through the Pittsburgh political machine. It is dirty, it is filthy, and they would do nothing. They will not stop at anything to go ahead and steal that election. But what I am telling you is it's deeper than that. And this isn't a left versus right thing, although people are going to fight it at that level. This is something that's been facilitated at a much higher level than that. And I'm saying that because when have you ever seen in any election before that they decided that votes they had in hand, they were just going to stop and not count? There's a reason the narrative is being advanced this way, and we are being set up as a country to try to cause the biggest amount of civil unrest and chaos. Trump will go along with it because it will allow him to have the centralization of power. The Democrats will go around with it because it lets them advance the narrative that this was stolen, and the media set it up perfectly. And what it's going to do is lead to violence in the streets that is designed to accomplish a larger goal. So here's my suggestion to each and every one of you. understand that this is being played along a script. Who was it who said it, actually? Because you have to forgive me. I literally woke up from sleep for this. As Richard said, that this, and he said it rightly, by the way, that what we are looking at is a situation where we have gone ahead and we are seeing something that this is set up like a novel. And as Raven said, this is being staged and scripted to be a civil war. And I will tell you what the next steps of the story is, because I've been following. Donald Trump will win, and then we may see some act of violence against him. Now, a lot of people have been paranoid and predicting that this will lead to either an assassination or an attempted assassination, and that Trump will then be removed from office physically and viscerally as a solution to this. The odds of that scenario have just gone up 1,000-fold based upon what's happened. And look, the media, say what you want about the thing is, but I watched this that night. They were having states declared for for Biden when there wasn't even 1% of the vote in. But Trump could have 98, 99% in Florida and they wouldn't call it. Something was funny all along. And as you all rightly said, and you guys are smart guys, you don't need me to tell you this, and smart ladies, this was an entirely scripted outcome. And as such, we have no choice but to follow along the script. But what I will say is, do not get caught up in the middle of this, because they're just trying to make you play us versus them, because the bigger game here is the deconstruction of the United States of America. And look, I'm a secessionist for New England. I get it. I know why this doesn't work very well. And mind you, I'm stuck in a blue region with a more very purpley mindset. But what I'm telling you is that what we are seeing here is something very different. And don't just go along passively with the narrative. Don't go ahead and get all riled up. And for my friends on the left, understand. Look at, you're going to say, well, what about sequence and process? Why didn't they just count the votes? Why didn't they, when they had months to prepare, say, hey, we need to have all these votes in ahead of time, an eminently preparable solution? And the answer is they didn't want to. They wanted to have the situation where they could throw this into doubt, because this has been part of the plan. And you have seen this being done over and over again. And if you're a Trump supporter, frankly, you have seen this done since day one, where they've made it impossible to govern. And that is the game here, because in the same way you're seeing lockdowns all around the world, in the same way that you're seeing that the Great Reset is being pushed harder and faster, you're also seeing that America, whose dollar has basically dominated the world, is being destabilized deliberately at warp speed in a way where we will now see, when this comes forward, the next steps are pretty obvious. The Supreme Court will issue an emergency injunction. They will probably rule on behalf of Trump in a divided court decision. There will be mass riots throughout the cities. The Insurrection Act will be imposed, and that's how America will move forward, I believe. Alternatively, maybe they let it happen, and it goes even more into uncontrolled chaos. But remember, the New World Order's thing is order out of chaos. So their goal isn't to have uncontrolled order. Their goal is to have order in a way that goes forward with this. And Trump probably represents the best way to go forward with that for their larger goals, which is the mass vaccination agenda and totalitarianism, because that is something they want to see. I could be wrong about that. This could go several different ways, and they have fluid off-ramps for how this can work. The one thing it won't go to a good way, though, is the idea that your vote had any meaning, or anything that happened yesterday was anything other than a charade. My apologies, I get a little bit nasal here, and it's really hard. Yeah, no, I'll tell you the truth. I went to bed at, so you guys know, I went to bed at 10:30 because I saw what they were doing in Pennsylvania, and I know Pennsylvania pretty well, and I was like, yeah, this isn't getting called tonight. I'm glad I could be here with you guys for a little bit, because I'm not going to sleep for a little bit, and then I'll get to bed. I mean, you know what, life goes on, and Reb, you're absolutely right that, Christ is the answer, and you know what, I'm telling you, you need Christ more than ever, because this stuff is Revelations tier. If you see someone get shot in the head and then come back, remember your book of Revelations, because that's the sort of world we're living in. But these are things we expected, and frankly, those of us who are in the prophetic word were actually expecting something like this to happen. That's one of the reasons why I'm not very freaked out, and I would say you are better off being in Maine than Cook County, Illinois. Our politics are bad, but you know what, the problem with Maine is that people here don't experience a lot of the problems that people do in other places, and otherwise we get along. And you know what, look, people have the right to vote that way, and I knew New England would vote the way it does, because New England always does. I mean, the truth is, white people virtue signal pretty hard, and I think it's interesting that the only group group that Trump actually lost votes in is white men, which just shows you that the narrative isn't what people, tell you it is about who's voting what and why. And it doesn't surprise me, actually, because it shows that white people are the most easily propagandized because we tend to watch the news and we tend to be sympathetic to the ideas of justice and order, which is why this thing is being fabricated in a way to appeal to a certain amount of us and the way we would look at that. So I think that's one of the things that comes out of this. Now, where it goes from here, the validity of this, I mean, I don't know how you rule on these things because, I mean, you could say that things were postmarked by a certain date, but the problem is you're going to have chain of custody issues. And there were a couple of lawsuits floating around about, what votes came in where. And you could go and you could pick case after case. And this is why you needed to have everything closed on election day. When you leave this open, there's such a temptation to fraud. And I suspect, like I said, the Supreme Court will close down the election, will declare Trump the victor, and we will see all hell break loose. And I think that it's very, very possible, given the breakdown of who voted where, that you may see a West Coast secession scenario evolve out of this. Some of you will remember, what was it called? The Transition Integrity Project, if I remember right, the thing that John Podesta, remember, a good Georgetown Jesuit boy, right, that goes around, was going forward with. We may see, in fact, I think something like that happen where places say they're not going to accept this and they ask for UN interventions. We saw it before this election. Some of you might have been paying attention. Germany said if Trump says he's going to stay in power, they would oppose that. Canada said if Trump would say that he was going to stay in power and spread, they would oppose that. And whether or not there's a bigger UN effort that's literally going to try to break down the U.S. And then the question you have to ask yourself, and I know you're not ready for this one, is if Trump is complicit in this in some way. If he ends up being someone who gets shot after going ahead and taking power, escapes from the scene, chaos emerges, and then we never see him again, and maybe he survives. And I know that sounds crazy, but we're in a wrestling world. Take it from someone who watched WWE for a lot of years, back when it was called WWF. These sort of swerves, as they're called, and heel turns are things that are pretty common that you see in this world. So I think there are things to watch for. I think things are going to get crazy, and I think it's unfortunate because I genuinely believe if the numbers were honestly counted and there wasn't fraud, Trump won. Not that I didn't vote for Trump. I told you guys I didn't vote. I chose not to vote, and I chose not to vote because I knew something wasn't right. And this only confirms my original suspicions. And my map was largely right too. I was maybe grabbed a little bit on Minnesota, but other than that, more or less nailed it. And I'm surprised Arizona went one way too, but apparently a lot of late votes aren't getting caught there. And it's interesting. Some of the most hardcore masker lockdown people, were in these states where problems happen. I mean, no one say Gretchen Whitmer has been anything other than a tyrant up in Michigan. And I talked to many people in Pennsylvania who just abhor Tom Wolf and his arbitrary lockdowns. In fact, the state Supreme Court had to shut him down. Doug Ducey's been kind of weird down in Arizona for talking about that state. And I haven't heard much good about Tony Evers either up in Wisconsin. So we'll see what happens. And remember, all those people in the Midwest were part of that block, or part of that Northeastern block where we had these different states coordinating separate from the federal government. So these are things we all have to watch now. And you have to forgive me if I'm moving this. I'm just holding this by hand, and I'm pretty damn tired. But if you guys have any questions or any thoughts, we could get them out quick. This isn't going to be a long chat because I'm just trying to tell you guys to keep your cool. Be aware of what's happening. Don't get dragged too much into any sort of narrative. This is a story, and there's nothing you, I, or anyone else can do to change it. But at the end, what we have to do is be aware that if we are being led to have a certain outcome, all of this story, all of this scripting is emotional propaganda being used to create a certain feeling and a certain outcome in you. And we have to be very smart and recognize that the purpose of this is the destruction of the United States as we know it in a way that accomplishes ends that are antithetical to what we all want to achieve. And we need to be very smart about how we watch that, and we need to watch the useful idiots that are going to go out there and make this 100 times worse. We already know they're there. The same people who are paying the media are paying the people in the streets who are going to be out there tearing stuff up like crazy starting tomorrow. And you're going to have to be smart. You're going to have to be safe. You're going to have to separate away. And I don't know where it goes from here other than I don't see it going well. And I think that's intentional. I absolutely believe that, and I'm not surprised by that. And frankly, we prepared for that. I told you to prepare for that because I knew it was coming. And the wife knew it was coming too, actually. We prayed deeply on that, and that's it. So what I would say here, it's a late night. If you've been up all night, have a warm glass of milk, have some tea, have something that would settle you down, avoid the caffeine, and just pray to the Lord for your family. Talk to your neighbors, talk to the people around you in the morning, get smart about these things, and don't overreact to anything that happens. Be smart about it. And I will say one thing: if this is being used at any point to bring in foreign intervention, and that's what we got to watch for in this, where they're going to go ahead and make decisions, that's when we need to begin organizing ourselves in opposition to that. Whether you're a Democrat, a Republican, an independent, whether you lean left or right, whatever your background is, you do not want to go ahead and be submitted to the authority of an occupying power. That is not where you want to be. And I suspect that is where we are being pushed and led to be. And I think we need to keep a very close eye on the governors now, whatever ends up happening out of this. And I know that's a hard spot for people, because I know half the people couldn't deal with it. I know, if Lord knows, if the Supreme Court upholds a Biden victory, I'm going to feel horrible about it. Nonetheless, it's probably still the lesser of two evils, and that's all there is at this point. There's only evil outcomes, and that's what I've been trying to tell you. There is no political solution for a spiritual problem. This whole thing is evil. Now, if you guys, now Rob asked a good question we need to organize off of here. You can go to Telegram, t.me/Atlantic Homeland. We go ahead and we do some organization there in terms of talking, but most of the organization you want to do is offline, because there's a lot of people out there who have bad intention, who will tell lies about you, but it's a chance to at least talk. This chat may be taken down. I don't know. I gave it a sort of ambiguous title. Excuse me. I often have a hard time breathing early in the morning, so that you would have the opportunity to do that. And, we are just going to have to be smart. And all you can do is persuade the people around you. But I will tell you, the reality is you're going to have a much harder time waking people up at this point. And it's just, people are going to be caught up in all of these sorts of problems. I'm going to, and I'll tell you what I can and what I see. And I will take the small risk of sharing at least a sane voice about this. And I will say, just, tonight, I mean, as I head off to bed, because I'm pretty tired still, although, sleeping 2 hours and waking up sucks, but what can you do? I just pray for the safety of all the American people, and that, we find our way to a better way out of this. And remember, it's not about the politicians. The politicians are the puppets by which we are, being acted upon. All of this is a show being scripted for your entertainment, just like wrestling is out there for you to buy seats and get in the products. All of this is theater designed for you. So don't look too deeply into the theater. Look at the deeper thing. Why are they doing this? What is the outcome they want? What is it they're doing in other countries they can't do here that they're trying to get to indirectly? And this is how we win the global war, or at least offer our best fight. We have to be very smart in not being led to that. Thank you, Johnny. I appreciate you going ahead. And if anyone wants to purchase my books, Lord knows it will be helpful. I mean, I think it won't be long before money won't have meaning, but I still appreciate it. And if you guys ever want to send help, the Venmo is at CVCPRV. So I'd appreciate that. But like I said, I'll just be praying the Lord's mercy on our country, on each of us, and that you be led to Jesus Christ. You should know by now there is no political solution. Ask for God to look out for us, because we're going to need some help now. We are fighting forces beyond our ability to defeat on our own. But the good news is God, the victory has always been his, and, fighting the enemy of evil. Evil always destroys itself. So let's hope that he can guide the way in a way that neither you nor I can. God bless each and every one of you. I probably will do an additional stream tomorrow at some point with some of the fallout of this. Honestly, don't pay too much attention to the media. You'll go nuts about it if you do. The talking heads are going to be blathering like crazy. Just remember that they could have made this easier. The fact that they chose not to, they scripted every step of it. This is a story. Enjoy the story, but don't get too caught up in it. The real world awaits all of us. God bless.